Welcome to this spiritual astrology video presentation. Attorney General Pam Bondi's astrology, that of the Rattle Snake. So, welcome to my YouTube channel, Altazar Astrology, as well as my website. Please visit www.altazarastrology.com. So today's presentation is going to be another, what I am evolving as forensic astrology, which is an extension of spiritual astrology. And as many of you are aware, that is that this level of astrology is meant to indicate what a person's soul growth is associated with in this life, symbolically through the astrology chart and signs, and how that chart reflects their personal growth, healing issues, potential gifts, talents, and abilities, as well as karmic blocks, frustrations, and difficulties. So in forensic astrology, this is where we're looking at a particular individual and their astrology natal chart to see if what we have observed in their history and behavior is corroborated by the symbolic karmic configurations in their astrology chart. It may as well confirm numerous gifts or talents they may have, or if we are trying to evaluate them as a potential public servant, client, or even personal relationship, friendship, associate, we may discover certain qualities or attributes that may not be very compatible with us. So, how this is going to proceed is that I'm going to evaluate the natal chart of Pam Bondi and indicate why I have subtitled this Rattle Snake. And for those of you who are not aware, she is born in the year of the snake. That's 1965. So everyone, and I give people the benefit of the doubt, uh, as well as, a more uh, realistic appraisal of who they are and how they may either reflect positivity or negativity. So it'll be my inclination to explain from this natal chart perspective why she's born in the year of the wood snake in Chinese astrology and what that means in her life purpose potential, as well as why, based on her history and current behaviors, I'm inclined to label her the rattlesnake. So I'm going to bring up her chart and we'll take a further look here and see what that indicates. So on the screen at this time, you will observe the chart for Pam Bondi, and I will be discussing now the perspective. And I'm going to make sure those charts are obvious here. So let's bring them up again. There we go. So, as I review anyone's astrology chart, I start by talking about the day of the week that they're born. And Pam Bondi was born on a Wednesday, as we see, and I'm using my arrow here. And a Wednesday person is one who is here to truly and deeply evolve their communication ability and communication skills. Now, again, uh, as I have prefaced in my other forensic astrological reviews of other celebrities and or notorious people, everyone has the potential in this life to evolve and express their identity, energy, and service in the world, either in alignment with higher spiritual and ethical humanitarian laws and principles, which underlie the meaning of karma, or we all have free will and the potential for being distracted or overwhelmed by egotism, which tends towards in behavior that's contrary to the underlying universal principles associated with love and support for the interconnectedness of life. So we'll look next at the fact that Pam Bondi is born on the 17th day of the month. Numerologically, that implies someone who has a deep emotional and or interpersonal sensitivity or perceptivity that also many will imply inclines one to be able to read people easily and be able to engage and or influence people. And that 17 also implies a deep ambition in that regard. She's born in 1965, and 1 and 9 is 10, plus 6 and 5, 11, 21. So she's a number 3 in destiny number, I mean, in year number numerologically. And so that for a theme for people born in that year is to be communicators, influencers, and have a certain confidence and charisma to do so. But next, we look at the fact that anyone born in the Chinese year 1965 is born in the year of the wood snake. So when a person is born in the year of the snake, you see again, there is a potential high level or evolved interpretation for their potentially expression of identity. Or there's the negative low side. Again, that's where free will or spiritual consciousness comes into play. And so, one who's born in the year of the snake is especially here to evolve and hone and uh, cultivate their skills, talents, abilities, intellect, etc., that can be then focused into a career in the material world and in a way that's practical and can be of economic or materialistic benefit to the world. On the next level, there's 5 kinds of snakes, as there is with every Chinese year: metal, water, wood, earth, and fire. And anyone born in any decade that is a 5 in the decade, 1955, 1975, 1965, a 5 year is a wood year. So you put that together, she is a wood snake. So in Chinese astrology, someone born in the year of the wood snake tends to be a more evolved. So if you think about wood as being like a tree, the conduit between heaven and earth, wood people are generally fairly evolved souls who, at a minimum, have a natural ability to cultivate their intellectual minds and have the opportunity to evolve social ability, skills, talents, consciousness of culture, society, philosophy, politics, or economics. Um, Yet the ultimate calling for a wood snake is to evolve their and use their intelligence, intellect, informational accumulation, and professional identity in a way that is in harmony ethically, morally, spiritually, in service to society at large, and uh, appreciates a um, diplomatic and ethical, balanced approach to using their professional, practical service in affecting the economy, the culture, and the fabric of society. So that's the high-minded wood snake. Now, unfortunately, I am asserting the subtitle of this presentation as rattlesnake. So most people are familiar with a rattlesnake as a poisonous snake, a snake that comes out of the dirt, the brush on a trail or in the woods. And if you surprise it or come on it quickly or in a threatening way, its tail has a rattle. It starts to rattle very viciously and will tend to snap and bite. And its bite is highly venomous and poisonous. So I'm not coming from a place of being a Democrat or a Republican, a liberal or a conservative. Uh, I'm simply coming from what is, or what any trained karmic astrologer would assert about interpreting the symbols in Pam Bondi's chart and correlating it with what most of us have observed, especially in her recent behavior as Attorney General of the United States. So I am going to make some points here. Uh, and you can come to your own conclusions from what you've experienced in the media and observations about Pam Bondi. And again, I'll preface this by saying you may, those of you who are somewhat amateurs or even trained or professionals, or at least novices even to astrology, if you recognize any of these planetary positions or angles in your own chart, that's not to say that you are just condemned to behave or are like Pam Bondi. Again, we all have, for all the different facets of symbols here, Mercury associated with communications, or Venus associated with personal relationships, or the moon associated with one's emotional responses. Uh, we all have a free will choice to evolve the positive, ethical, spiritually moral and loving sensibility associated with that facet of our nature or not. So we're going to look here at Pam Bondi and start by noting that you know I can talk for 2 hours about a person's chart, but we're just honing in here on uh, the rattlesnake implication. And that is because Pam Bondi is born on a Wednesday. That's Mercury Day. And so we're going to focus in on Mercury. Mercury in the Aries decanate, 17 degrees of Sagittarius, implies just within itself a person's potential, or at least motivated ambition, to evolve their intellect and intelligence along the lines of the humanities, philosophy, law, history, legalities, uh, cultures, foreign cultures. And so then we look at the angles to Mercury. Those are called aspects. So the angles or aspects in a person's chart show to what extent the fundamental symbolism of the planet in a sign has evolved either favorably or naturally towards what we call positive karma. The positive karma of the use of Mercury is someone who applies or cultivates their information, intellect, and intelligence in alignment with deeper moral, ethical, heart-based empathy, so that their communications have a wisdom that promotes uh, more favorable and diplomatic, evolved sharing of information that contributes to the progress of the subject material or influence they're engaged with. That's the high potential for using one's Mercury in Sagittarius as a kind of guide, teacher, uh, and uplifting ideologically. Now, when we look at first Mercury square Saturn, now I should point out that people can be multidimensional. So people can have sides to them that are positive, caring, empathic, diplomatically tactful in their communications, uh, as well as sides to them that are tend to be impatient or aggressive, abusive, or condescending. Well, that's that the multiple sides of a person's potential is indicated by whether they have not only squares or potential opposites, but also have trines or sextiles to that planet. Now, Pam Bondi has no trines or sextiles to Mercury. So that's not to say that she's 100% difficult. She does have a Venus in Capricorn trining the moon, which means in her personal relationships, she can be caring and considerate and rather amiable. However, uh, the Saturn position in Pisces squaring Mercury implies someone who can be inordinately, ruthlessly ambitious. And that can indicate someone who may take shortcuts or uh, just grasp any opportunity they might be able to engage in ideologically or politically or sociologically that yields them advancement in their socioeconomic status. Mercury square Saturn also implies someone who tends to be conservative, someone who tends to want to latch on to whatever might be an established ideology, religion, uh, political belief system, or whatever that tends to support their economic and or political view or vision for the world. And Mercury, so that in itself implies uh, her natural attraction to uh, a certain degree of a conservative ideology of established belief systems that are have a certain kind of moralistic or ethical uh, dogmatism. And Mercury square Saturn implies those who tend to want to embrace a dogmatism of some kind. Now, but that's not all here. We see she has the sun in Scorpio in the what we call the Cancer decadent. And so that implies that her fundamental identity development is very connected to the experience she has had with her mother. And this implies that her mother may have been somewhat conservative and ideological with the Saturn trine. Uh, Yet, the Jupiter aspect implies she has a certain abandonment issue with her father, that her father may not have been uh, there available to her in a manner that offered role modeling for her identity development. And therefore, this Jupiter aspect implies, that he may have been erratically available. And the Jupiter aspect implies that she would tend to be rather opportunistically ambitious, yet subordinate to a male figure who has a certain ideological charisma as well as political or philosophical dogmatism that she agrees with. That could be someone like Donald Trump. However, uh, and so this tends to fuel a kind of subordinate allegiance to a leader, and then an adamant defensiveness of that leader and or her ideological position. Well, then we come to the issue of her mother. And so this Saturn aspect opposite her moon and then in a T-square to Mercury implies a mother and or a family that comes or that has an extremist kind of or even hypercritical conservative ideological and self-righteous approach to the world. This Mercury aspect implies that with her moon in the Capricorn decadent of Virgo, not to mention the experience with her mother may have been extraordinarily ideological and hypercritical uh, of her, as well as drumming or prodding towards her to become ambitious and driven for intellectual and professional success in the world. And so, what this aspect implies for her is not only this conservative, uh, almost ruthless ambition for uh, upward mobility in society with the use of her intellectual, ideological, legalistic, or philosophical orientation. But this implies that there could be a kind of unscrupulous ruthlessness in, uh, and some might call it even narcissistic ruthlessness in uh, denigrating or attacking her enemies, even to the extent of fabricating exaggerations, lies, or distortions, or what many would call gaslighting. So that Pam Bondi is someone who has what some might call the most extreme kind of narcissistic gaslighting defensiveness. And so you see, from this point of view, for me, it's not in the least surprising to observe not only Pam Bondi's embrace of Trump's use of her as the weaponized Department of Justice, but she will readily attack anyone who uh, is contrary to or uh, trying to criticize or condemn Trump's behavior. And even to the extent of her testimony in front of Congress recently, where she came in prepared with a binder full of prepared attacks on any kind of vulnerability, problem, or historical controversy associated with any of the senators or congressional members who would be confronting her, challenging her, or condemning or criticizing Trump. And it was extraordinary for the public to witness, let alone anyone with an ounce of intelligence, to see her continually deflect outright questions about her. And this would not be surprising from a forensic astrology point of view, how she has unscrupulously uh, either evaded, distorted, delayed, or hid or manipulated the presentation of the Epstein's files in a ruthless attempt to hide any kind of evidence or implication of Donald Trump in the Epstein files. Now, so her behavior, this Mercury square the moon, Pluto, Uranus, and square Saturn, is that of one who can use cruel, sadistic, or verbal attack towards their perceived enemies. And it's the Jupiter aspect to the sun and is the potential of an extreme self-righteous egotism. essentially, Trump couldn't have picked a better, if you will, attack dog for his efforts to use the Department of Justice as a weaponized tool to attain not only the repression or uh, attack on his enemies, but also uh, his opportunistic ventures towards uh, controlling the dismantlement of democracy and the voter suppression efforts that Bondi is implementing through the DOJ. Now, uh, what I want to also demonstrate here is the chart of Christy Nome that I've talked about in a previous video. And you'll recall that Christy Nome, look at this here. Christy Nome is also Mercury in Sagittarius, a different degree, so different interpretation. But she has a Mercury Venus in a square to Pluto. And so uh, she is not as vicious, if there's any way to show some relativity. But let's say she's not as viciously overt and aggressive as Pam Bondi, but they both have the Pluto square Mercury, which fundamentally is someone who is quite deeply intellectually evolved and communicative and highly perceptive of the manipulation of their speech, verbosity, political, and public persona as it can be used to promote ruthlessly their ambitions, perspective, and or uh, prefabricated or even uh, deceptive or lying perspectives on actions or activities politically engaged in the public. So there's the parallel of two birds of a feather flock together, if you want to use another expression. And then let's take a look here at the chart of Donald Trump and note that, ironically, as I shared in Christy Nome's chart, Pam Bondi's Mercury in Sagittarius, which is down here, just like Christy Nome in Sagittarius, uh, and her moon in Virgo, right here. That T square is in the symbolic alignment of Trump's adverse lack of emotional empathy he experienced with his mother. This is the house of his mother. His moon in Sagittarius, quincunx Saturn and Venus, implies that his mother may have been kind of repressed or been more of a trophy wife for the status of his father, and also uh, tended to support his emotional being associated with his material status in the world and his social economic status. And in fact, Christy Nome and Pam Bondi both seem to reinforce that narcissistic drive that Trump has to find some illusory fulfillment in his domination and superiority. Yet, uh, this moon, Pluto, Uranus in Virgo here in a square to his moon, and also her Mercury and the Saturn actually imply that she can be and or precipitate and undermine his whole political public stature. That she, in fact, if he had a compatibility astrologer, a compatibility astrologer like myself would say she is uh, implicitly and underlyingly your worst enemy in terms of your ultimate or more favorable ambitions. So, lastly, I'm going to bring out the chart of Pam Bondi and the United States here. So, if we look at the chart of the United States and we see where is Pam Bondi? Well, her sun sign's in the 12th house. That's the house of prisons, psychiatric problems, and uh, potentially undermining or subversive efforts. We also look at the fact that her Mars in Capricorn is opposite the planets in Cancer for the United States, especially Jupiter and Venus. That implies that her behavior and actions can be contrary, if not uh, adverse, to the overall cultural, political, or democratic ideology of the well-being of the United States. Her Saturn in Pisces here is in a direct square to Uranus of the United States. Uranus standing for the general constitution and political ideology and foundation of the United States. Saturn in square implies someone who has an ambition or an ideological drive to undermine the foundation constitutional structure of the United States. And then we see her moon, Pluto, Uranus here, also square that Uranus of the United States, but also in the ninth house, someone who could be engaged in promoting their own philosophical, even religious or political ideology uh, in a delusionary belief that they're promoting the more favorable welfare of the United States. So, lastly, we also see here Pam Bondi's Mercury, that core aspect of uh, degenerate, negative, critical, ideological, adverse negativity of communication, opposite the Mars of the United States, that Pam Bondi in this context implies being an ideological, intellectual, communicative, outright enemy to the identity and welfare of the United States and its people. Need I say any more? Forensic astrology again confirms that if you have any prayers, Pam Bondi either resigns or is impeached, along with the eventual ending of the Trump administration from the corruption being revealed uh, directly with Donald Trump. Wishing you all well and inviting you to visit my website, www.altazarastrology.com. If you found this video insightful and informative, please do click the like button. And if you haven't yet, to be informed of future expositions on interesting and or notorious celebrities and individuals, please subscribe.